This is the Jim Nog Pod with your host, Jim Noguera. On today's show, episode 4, Jose Luis Reyes, instructor, colleague, friend. Let's start the show.
This is the Jim Nog Pod with Jim Noguera. It is the Jim Nog Pod with Jim Noguera.
Most interested man in the world. Interested
with Jim Noguera.
Interested. A most interested man in the world. Interested. Interested
In the world.
Welcome. Today's show features my colleague, Jose Reyes. I've known him for a long time through the Writing Center. I want to thank him once again for coming on the show. We've known each other for a long time, but we've never had a conversation like this with so many other people listening and watching, and it felt a little strange, but I'm very thankful that he did the interview. During our conversation, we talked about growing up in the DR, learning English, going to NYU. We talk about his personal pedagogy and working at CLIP, the CUNY Language Immersion Program. And now, Jose Luis Reyes. Okay, I'm here with my friend, my colleague, fellow instructor, Jose Luis Reyes. We go back a long time, my friend.
Yes, that is correct.
Do you remember the first time that we met?
I think I remember. I mean, I saw you. We were in the philosophy hall building.
Yeah.
In the basement.
The basement of Philosophy Hall.
Yeah.
Which is like, well, the people can't see in the camera, but
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's in the basement of Philosophy Hall. In 2007 was when I started.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what do you
Well,
remember about me back in those days?
Well, you were quiet, reserved. You participated, and you spoke what was necessary.
Yes.
And you engaged with the students genuinely in the sessions, as far as I remember. You didn't make a lot of jokes. You were like,
Very quiet.
very quiet, yeah. But very often we kind of engage in some sort of discussion. You came up with some questions to kind of ignite some sort of the conversations that we had with Noman and company. That's pretty much. I mean, that's kind of what I remember. I mean, I can think about you interacting with other people in the meetings, and I can remember that you participate again. What is sufficient, and you also interacted with Jan.
Yeah.
You asked questions with Jan. You asked questions.
The director, Jan
Director
Robertson.
Jan. Yeah. And then you kind of started also reaching out to Noman, right? You kind of you found
Colleague.
something over there. Yeah. Noman.
Our colleague.
Our colleague, yeah. So I think that you found in him someone that was kind of another person you talk to and that you felt comfortable with.
And I have to say, it's really interesting for anybody who's listening. You are a spiritual person, right? And Noman is a devout Muslim. So I think it's interesting that me, as an atheist, or agnostic, whatever. I always preferred the term agnostic because I felt like atheism was like more of a certain position. Like, I know God doesn't exist. Where that wasn't really my position. My position was more like, I don't know whether God exists or not, and I don't think that's really much of a scientific question because you can't really prove it one way or the other. But I find it interesting that I struck up friendships with very religious individuals, and we got along just fine.
Yeah.
And we had some really interesting conversations.
Yes.
Which I want to sort of go back to some of the things we talked about if there's time. Some of the philosophical discussions that we had. But I want to kind of talk about you and your experiences, your educational experiences, your teaching experiences. So, how would you describe yourself right now, who you are? How would you describe Jose Luis Reyes to listeners and watchers?
Well, I'm I would say a dreamer and someone that has determination to achieve personal goals, someone that likes to be with families, enjoy friendships, has some sort of a spiritual connection, and wants to analyze things. So basically, that will be some of the characteristics that I will name.
Can I sum that up?
Yeah.
A lover, a thinker. Yeah, I think those were the two main things. You love and you think. Wow, that's beautiful, man.
You want people to. I think people need to love and to think these days. When you love, you have this meaning in life. I remember a colleague who told me just like a couple of weeks ago that there will always be work to do. I mean, if you think about people in academia, we never stop, right? Our work doesn't stop within the campus. We go with our work to our houses and we continue working, and sometimes people make their work kind of their lifestyle. They need to work. Work is part of their family, their lives, and then love is and romance is out. And then she said to me, "Well, work will always be there, but romance is something special." And today, people need to love. I think to have meaning, to give. If you don't love, it's hard to give things unconditionally, not just like love. I love you because you're gonna give me something. And then I think it's important nowadays because very often we don't spend the time. Thinking requires time. Thinking requires contemplation. And because we're living in a society now, in a data-driven society, in technological society, when the fastest you go, the better. And then you're distracted all the time, then thinking becomes a little bit like falls behind and people don't engage in thinking a lot. So I think those two things are important for people today, not to forget their a moment to love, to find meaning, and a moment to reflect.
And I think another thing that you could add on to that, to the thinking aspect, is that we that academics especially are valued by how much work they produce and for their thinking. If you stop writing or publishing, or if you're static, right? It's like your value goes down, or at least it stagnates, and then after a while, if you really just don't produce anything, you're kind of devalued. as an academic. Certainly, once you get into positions where you are tenure tracked, and it all really depends on that. So I think that coincides with what you're talking about. There is a need to think, but when you value it so much that you're devalued for not thinking or for not producing enough, then I think that's when you're valuing it too much. And I think there's a value to what you're talking about, to loving, to having human relations, not just romantic relations, but loving your fellow man, right? I think this is something that we can both agree on. I mean, you from your like religious concepts, and me from my more just, I don't know, secular conceptions, that loving, and not everybody is deserving of loving, right? I mean, maybe you would disagree with that. I don't know, but there are some people on earth that probably don't deserve your love. Osama bin Laden may not be a guy worthy of your love, but I think it's important to feel love for other people, help other people, and also to fall in love. What do you think about that?
The fall in love part?
Especially the part where I talked about loving, that there are some people not worth your love. Do your beliefs allow you to say that?
Many of us are we think that we, because of what we do, because of how we conduct ourselves, we deserve loves. We deserve to be loved, and that is true, and that is great. But if it depends also on the standards that we use to judge people. And if we go by what we have, our laws and our moral values, we could say, well, there are some people that are definitely not worthy of love. But if we go a little deeper and then we think about what we think, what we do, and what we do not do, then many of us will probably not be worthy of love in that we are not, we may be just as guilty of things like other people. It's not going to be a crime. We're not going to be like killing people. It's not about killing individuals but being careless with your family members, destroying relationships that are meaningful, hurting other people verbally and abusing them. Those are things that are, of course, again, they are not crimes. We don't deem them as things that are like, this is serious. This person deserves to go to jail for this. But if this is the standard that we have, if we go for deeper standards, like standards that have to do with how you think and what is in your heart, then many of us may be just, out of the equation of, we may not be within the group that deserves love. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's interesting. So you're saying, even though we might think of ourselves as different from some of these other people that obviously, we would say don't deserve our love, that we are also culpable in some sense for what we do. But yeah, okay, go ahead.
Let me ask something else. The idea of deserving love, it goes also to what we think of justice, and for many people and Christians who believe in God and believe in what God has done, and the Bible describes a God that loves sinners, loves everyone, even though everyone has turned his or her back towards him. So even when he knew, let's assume, for example, let's be hypothetical at this point. So Jesus, let's assume that Jesus was God for just 1 second, and he knows the future. He knows that many people will not believe in him, even when he's dying for them. But still, he does it because he's loving people unconditionally. And I think that type of love is a love that is not. I don't think can. It's hard to find it in human beings because we don't go by those standards, like unconditional love. Even when you hate me, when you hurt me, when you kill people that I love, and I still love you, I still like have the condition. And again, this is something that goes back to what we define as who is worthy of love, and whether love is something that we can actually give.
Yeah. So, are you saying that that's where your philosophy is, that you would love everyone unconditionally, or that you would try to love everyone
I think I
unconditionally?
would try. I mean, I'm not a perfect human being. I think under difficult circumstances, I may react in a different way. But I can say that the invitation is there for us to kind of love people unconditionally. And that doesn't mean that we are going to condone what they do. That doesn't mean that we are going to enjoy what they do. But it means at the same time that we can have in our heads the compassion, or at least be aware that, hey, these are human beings, and I can go beyond what he has done, or what this group of people have done. And yes, they can go to jail. We're going to do justice. But I can still think of that as a human being, those people as human beings. Yeah. It's a hard thing to do.
Yes.
And I can understand many people who do not necessarily agree with the idea of loving people unconditionally, because it's a hard thing to do.
So you're acknowledging that they're different. So when you were talking originally about, okay, we make mistakes too, but we don't put people in jail for that, you would agree that there's a fundamental difference between, let's say, let's use the example that we used before, Osama bin Laden, and whatever your feelings are, my feelings are, and not being the best son, or not being the best boyfriend or girlfriend, there's a fundamental difference
Of course,
there, right?
yeah. Of
okay,
course.
great.
Yeah. Of course. I'm not comparing not being a good son to a terrorist act. There's no. I'm not doing that. What I'm referring is the fact that when you ask me about whether are there people there that deserve love, or to be loved, and sometimes we put in ourselves we put ourselves in a position of the love givers. When what I'm trying to say is that sometimes we are not really in that position. We may need love too. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That's a whole nother interesting conversation. I don't know how deep into this rabbit hole I want to go. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about. I like to ask people, because I'm very curious about how early childhood memories and experiences lead to people choosing what they want to do with the rest of their lives and who they become. So right now you work at CLIP, right? The CUNY Language Immersion Program. Mm-hmm. You have an expertise in teaching ESL students. Mm-hmm. So is there anything that you remember from your childhood or your early, let's say, anything from your early childhood to maybe your early adolescence that has taken you down this path to made you decide, okay, I want to teach. I want to help people like myself who learned English as a second language. Was there anything like that for you?
I don't think early in my childhood there wasn't something that I can connect to and say, hey, this experience helped me become a ESL instructor. I do remember a couple of things that I guess are related to teaching. One of them is that, and this is me being an adolescent already, I was in charge of a group of people, a group of young people, to lead them into, camp meetings and things like that. And a friend of mine told me once, like, he once looked at me and said, "Man, you are a leader." And I still remember, I don't know what did he mean by that. But I guess that idea of leading people, that practice of leading people, telling them what to do, I guess led me to the teaching career. And not necessarily teaching ESL students, because that's a little different. I guess that came later when I came to this country and I was tutoring, basically. I think that in there intensified this desire to help other people and to help them learn English and find strategies that they can use to enhance their learning experience. So I think that came a little later.
Okay, and that makes a lot of sense. But let's illustrate a little bit for people listening, so they can understand a little bit better. Because I know I've known you for a long time, so I get how where you come from and your experiences has motivated you. But what was it like growing up in the DR? So what do you remember most about growing up in the DR?
So I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic. And it was a great childhood. I remembered playing a lot with my friends.
Playing what?
Playing, baseball. I mean,
Cool.
Baseball, different games that we kind of came up with. Because when you're poor and you don't have resources, you came up with a lot of things.
You have to use your creativity.
Yeah, you kind of, we didn't have any kind of bats or all this equipment that professionals have, so we had to create things. And also, I guess the opportunity to go out with my friends, to go to farms, and we call them fincas, and get fruits like mangoes and things like that, climb trees, and those, some of the memories. My elementary school, that was another great experience. It's interesting, it was an all-boy school, and it's an all-boy, and but even when it was all-boy, we all had like a good time, playing, learning about sports, and learning about, of course, math and all these subjects that we usually took at the time. And then after that, my first job in the, one of the branches of the Supreme Court in my country. And that experience was really nice. I mean, I got to be with some important people, and then also worked for individuals that were in need, in the registry of deeds, like getting certifications for their house. And so those things I think are the ones that I remember the most. And, the open, it's a tropical weather, going out
nice.
To work and coming back, and then be able to still have time to sit down with people, talk to them. All those things were really nice, and I do remember those things with the special feeling.
Yeah, okay, so I think I've told you before, I've been to the DR like a handful of times with my mom. She used to take me every summer when I was a lot younger. To visit family, etc. My experiences were not as pleasant as your experiences. And it might have a little bit to do with context, because growing up in America, not having very many friends, staying home all the time, and then going to the DR, all these insects everywhere and all of these lizards.
Oh, come on.
It's so unpleasant.
That makes it unique. If you don't have those elements, your experience is not as enjoyable, interesting, whatever that means to you, and not like natural. I mean, you're there.
Oh, it was natural.
It's natural. If when a mosquito bites you and you
Hate it.
you feel the connection.
I have a deep hate for mosquitoes, a hatred for mosquitoes. I'm a vegetarian, but I really don't mind just if all the mosquitoes were wiped out. I would be pretty happy.
Okay.
But yeah, my experiences weren't that great. A lot of mosquito bites, cockroaches. Why do cockroaches fly in the DR? That's super creepy and scary. I hated it, especially when the lights would go out. So the lights would go out, and there's a cockroach, and it's flying around somewhere. It drives me crazy.
Okay. Well, because you were raised here, and then some of those things don't happen here. I'm saying some of them because I have found that here in New York there are things that are worse than over there. For example, like I have never in my life had an experience with bed bugs. And that's something that I heard over there, but I had never had that experience. And in here, it's very often that you find people with bed bugs in their apartments. And then rats and mouse, of course, whether you may find one or two, but I didn't have personally, I didn't have in my house, and I was a poor, you could say poor, I was classified as poor. So we didn't have those things. But yes, in the art, you would find those things, and but we get to live with those things, and there are other things that make the experience better. So it's not just that side. Probably you focus on that side.
I was focused on that side.
Yeah, yes. But there are other sides, like, the natural resources that we have, the nice people that we have, the friendly people, good food, and this opportunity to go out to enjoy the weather and people freely. And
it's nice.
Yeah, those are the things. And beautiful people too.
Oh, yeah, certainly. I think Dominican women are some of the most beautiful women in the world.
I was not referring to women, but that's okay.
Okay,
that's okay.
That was my fixation. I apologize. It's like pick your poison. Do you want to die from bed bugs and rats and mice? You can choose to live here, or do you want to be surrounded by ants, spiders, mosquitoes, roaches, like all sorts of stuff in the DR.
I mean, you have them here too. I mean, some of them.
Yeah, but I mean, come on. Like the ants, like if you were to compare ants here versus DR, let's say in the Bronx versus the DR, it's not even close, man.
I know, but I guess your experience was a little dramatic.
Ants nearly killed me. I remember I have an early experience. So this is an early experience in the DR. I want to say I'm 10 years old or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm running barefoot on this tall grass, right? And I'm running along, and my feet are just killing me. I've never felt this sort of pain before. I come out of the grass, and these little demons we call ants were all over my leg, and they were biting me. They were mean ants, and they were all biting me, and it took me a while to get them all off. And it's one of those experiences that scarred me as a kid, and for that I don't like ants. I've had some bad experiences with spiders, and even one time I think there was a big bumblebee or a bee a large bee. It might have been a hornet. I don't know. In a what do you call those things? In a shed. So yeah, I don't like the insects. If DR was DR without the insects, like I would go all the time. I'll just say that much.
Then it may not be DR. It may not be the DR that we know and unique. Those experiences, I think, they were dramatic to you, but they're not really dramatic for many people that I know, especially those who are born and raised over there. You learn to live with those things, and they're not really there all the time. It's not like they live in your house forever. Like, and
They lived in my house.
Well, we'll have to have a conversation to kind of locate your house and see where was it, what was happening there.
There were ants.
Was there, maybe do you live in the countryside?
Yeah, it was my aunt's house, and I had relatives who had a farm, so very rural.
Okay,
very rural.
That explains part of the situation.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's the capital. I haven't been. I've never been to the capital. So
In the capital, you may find that, but it's not as common because those are things that are you will find them in rural areas and outside of the city.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
all right, let's we'll change topics from my childhood nightmares. Let's
Yeah.
talk about you learning English, right? You started to learn English in the DR, right?
Yes, I learned English in the DR. I learned in an institute in my city, San Cristobal, and I studied English for at least 2 years. But again, this is more of grammar and not so much of reading, or writing. I mean, there was reading, but not writing, as in not writing at all.
Okay.
Speaking is difficult because you don't find people to talk to. You don't have a conversation. You're not forced to speak in English in your job or things like that.
There's no immersion.
There's no immersion. I mean, now, and again, this is in my experience. We have institutes over there that are really like immersion programs there,
Fantastic.
but I was not able to afford them. I just went to the ones that were,
Okay.
affordable for me.
So how did you find learning English in the DR? Was it especially difficult? Did it seem like English was just like this far away thing that was mysterious? And
No, I don't think it was difficult because you are exposed at some point in elementary school or in high school. They teach you some English, so it's not alien. You also have the influence of the United States in the island, and many of the things that we have people from the Dominican Republic here in New York also. They go there, and then all these things combined makes the combination makes the experience of learning English something familiar because you're exposed to the language somehow, somewhere.
right, like I understand that, but I meant like it just doesn't seem like the most efficient way to learn it. Because you said it focused kind of like on grammar. I imagine you had like some textbooks and things. Not so much speaking, and then there wasn't immersion opportunities. So how effective was that kind of instruction for you?
I would say it was effective raising the awareness of what is the language and how does it work, and the learning words, I guess concepts. Again, in my experience within the program that I attended to, that I attended was not an immersion program, and that made a difference. Had I gone to another program, it would have been a different story. There's one in the capital that is really an immersion program, and I have seen some people that have gone to this program. They come out and they speak English, well. So in my experience, that was the situation. Yeah.
Okay.
It was not, I would say, not effective as I wanted, because once I came here, I was not placed in when I applied to be in BCC, I was placed in ESL 2, and that was like a low level.
Yeah, so like a remedial course. Okay, that leads to where I wanted to take the conversation next. So, what's it like coming to the U.S.? Did you have family here?
Yes, my mother was here.
Okay. Coming to the U.S. and I guess, like you said, there's some influence culturally in the DR. So maybe it's not the most different culture in the world, but what's it like to adjust to a new culture and then, acclimating yourself linguistically? Were there any kind of language hacks that you used to improve your English?
Okay. So my experience learning the language was difficult at the beginning because I couldn't speak well. I couldn't listen well. And I had to be shy. Sometimes I couldn't express my ideas correctly. People didn't understand me. Just the normal things, right, that happen to people who do not speak the language well. But as I kind of started attending BCC and met this wonderful mentor, Sharon Utakis, my mentor, she helped me a lot, and I was focused, and I was with the Moment Dictionary and an ESL dictionary all the time.
Awesome.
And then I kind of learned and developed some strategies. I actually wrote a chapter about that, and in that chapter I discussed basically 4 things that I did. One of them was obviously carrying the dictionary all the time.
Yeah.
Nowadays you don't have to do that. Luckily, you just have to have your phone download or something. You don't have to do that anymore. The other thing is just listening to a radio station, and I did that, even though I didn't understand many of the things at the beginning. But I learned that my job was just to listen to what they were saying.
Yes.
And that was another strategy that I kind of came up with. And I also reflected on my readings. I didn't do that a lot, but I did it at least, I would say a couple times, and it was really, really amazing. Like when you spend time, at least 20 minutes, thinking about how to restructure sentences when you're learning a new language, that helps you a lot.
Was that daily, weekly?
No, it was like every 2 weeks or when I had an assignment. It was not really that very often. I was not a disciplined person when it comes to that particular strategy. And the other thing was reading newspaper, like the New York Times.
I got you.
And those were the things that I guess helped me, and I share that in the chapter. So people can see that there are things outside of the classroom that you can use, that you can try to learn and improve your learner experience, and become a better writer.
Yeah, maybe we should mention that you are published in a work. Forgive me, I don't recall the name of the book.
Okay, this is the book.
Oh, okay, there we go. Tutoring Second Language Writers, and it's edited by Shanti Bruce and Ben Rafoth. Rafoth.
Yeah.
Okay, and you have a whole chapter in there.
Yep.
Fantastic. Where you talk about you as an ESL learner. Those are the strategies that you use, the 4 strategies that you just outlined.
Yeah.
I think those are really good strategies. I would probably, if I may, I would also add just speaking to people in that language.
That was also in the chapter. Sorry, I just outlined those 4.
Okay.
But that was the last one that I mentioned.
Good.
Is to speak up. You need to speak up.
You have to.
Yeah. Speak up with people. make friends that are, you know, English speaking friends, and then gossip and enjoy it, and then in that language.
And immerse yourself, right? Force yourself to use the language.
Yeah, and at the same time, though, you don't need to forget your language. So many people have that, I think, perception that you need to forget your language in order to immerse in English. I think your language is necessary. It's obvious. I mean, when you study cognition, you realize that people, when they are learning a second language, they need their first language, right? Many times you need it because there are things that you know that you can make connections to because you have them in your first language. And your language is important. Your first language is important in the process. But you want to pay attention, prioritize, and then spend more time learning English, like speaking English, because you want to practice. You want to improve.
Yes.
And so that's you just want to clarify that part. That's many individuals think that they need to subtract, and in reality, you just need to add.
Of course. We can take that in so many different directions. We can talk about the cognitive benefits of knowing multiple languages, which has been shown over and over again through many studies. But I want to mention my philosophy with regards to language learning because I'm a language nut, I guess. I like languages. I like to learn languages. I think that they're fun.
Okay, I didn't know that part, but keep going.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I try. Obviously, I try to maintain my Spanish. I'm a big fan of Japanese culture and the Japanese language. My Japanese is okay. I can communicate and, but in a basic way, I can have like small conversations. My French is pretty good. Like I can pretty much communicate whatever I want. Then there's Italian and Portuguese. I just started with Portuguese. Because they're Romance languages, they're not too difficult to pick up. I really would like to learn more Chinese, though. And then there are other languages that every now and then I look into. Hindi, I think, is a beautiful language. The resources for Hindi are not as convenient as some of the resources available for other languages. The Romance languages, German. So anyway, so I like languages. So my philosophy is that's connected to what you were saying. When you learn another language, you have to make it a part of your life. You have to make it a part of your life because you have to continuously use it.
Yeah.
If you don't continuously use it, you will lose it, right? And therefore, it has to be a part of your life. If it's not a part of your life, you're not going to continuously use it, right? If it's something that you're not going to do, if you're not going to use, you're just going to lose it. So there are different ways to do that. You can devote a day to learning that language, where like every Saturday it's Japanese day, and you can annoy all your friends by only speaking in Japanese. Or you can just do certain activities only in certain languages, or you can whether that's reading or watching anime or whatever. Or you can have like separate lives. So right now I'm with you. Maybe I choose, if you allow me to, okay, only speak Spanish with Jose. Right, only speak Spanish with Jose, so that way I can maintain that ability, and that will be like a little Spanish life or Latino life. And then if I had another friend who spoke Japanese, which I don't right now, then only speak Japanese with that person. I think those are really good ways to maintain languages. What do you think?
No, good. I think those are nice strategies people can use.
Okay. Great. So then you start to pick up the language, and you actually start to get really good at the language. And you started out at BCC, but shout out to your alma mater. You eventually move on to NYU. What was that like? Because come from humble beginnings. English is not your original language, and now you're at NYU, the big city. What was that experience like?
It was good. It was, I think when I look at it, sharing with my peers, the classmates that I had over there, it was good. Sometimes I felt culturally isolated because of the topics that they discussed were not topics that I knew at the time, and I was not kind of engaged in all the conversations. People, I think, generally speaking, are busy with their lives, and especially when they are in a university like NYU, you have work to do. There's not so much time to kind of share quality time and then hang out with people. But that was for the classmates. When it comes to faculties, like interacting with professors, I think it was really great. I had wonderful professors there, and the experience was rich because NYU has a lot of resources, and you are in a place where I found diversity there. I mean, in my experience with the group that were there, within the faculties and all the people, and also the fact that you are talking to people that are like they are number one in their fields, that makes you feel like, okay, I'm learning, like I am just getting everything directly from the fountain. Like you have, like I have one, for example, one professor, Lawrence Schiffman, in a class, the Dead Sea Scrolls. And this guy is like number one or number two, I don't know, number one, number two in this field, in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And talking to him and then having some kind of private conversations, it makes you feel like, wow. And then I also had an older professor, Guillermina Hassol. She is an immigration, she teaches immigration over there. And she was in I think a national council for the government at some point. And so, being exposed to these people, listening to them, what they have to say about their fields and all their things, I think it's a great experience. And going down, the commute was okay, and the whole experience, I think it was good.
Good. What did you study?
Applied psychology. So I got a bachelor's of science in applied psychology.
And then you started to work at CLIP, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, again, for people who don't know, it's the CUNY Language Immersion Program. The idea is to immerse people who, English is not their first language, in an environment of English speaking, and writing and listening and reading.
Critical thinking.
Yeah, exactly. So what are your experiences like at CLIP? I assume it's very fulfilling because I've tutored over there, and I found it to be really fulfilling because it's so powerful when you give someone the power of language acquisition, and especially when you're involved in such formative experiences for young students. I imagine it's very gratifying. So talk a little bit about teaching for CLIP.
It's a great experience, like you said, it's fulfilling, and you work with people from all over the world. You get to know different cultures, and you identify with their struggles, and you're there with them, teaching them and giving them some of the tools that they can use, and they find also in you like a person that they can trust in, and they can come to. So I think that's a great experience. Also, every time I go into my classroom, I go in there with the assumption that they are capable, they are critical thinkers, and that these are people who have already degrees from their countries, many of them. For example, I had a doctor in my classroom.
Wow.
I mean, a doctor. I mean, I
From
would
where?
not be
The DR?
from
or?
the DR.
Okay.
I also had someone that with an engineering degree from Tunisia.
Wow.
Someone else has I think it was I don't know if it was a 2 years degree from Africa. I don't remember exactly the country.
Okay.
The country that he came. I don't want to say Ghana, but one of the countries, and he had this degree already. So these are people that are highly educated.
Yes.
And I obviously not all of them. Many of our students come from a high school, but having the opportunity to teach these people, I find it an honor. And when I come in, besides the feeling that this is an honor, I go in with the assumption that these are individuals that are going to be learning, and they are willing to engage in a critical discussion of things. And teaching in CLIP has helped me see that this is something that is true. I mean, that learning a second language, when you listen people learning a second language, when they speak in English, for example, sometimes they mispronounce words, and automatically we think that they are somewhat, dumb. Yeah. And then we realize, well, they are not aware. They don't know. They're slow or something like that. And then people,
And the students believe it of themselves, which I find frustrating because
some students, I would say,
it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They think that they're stupid because they speak English with an accent, or they don't know how to phrase certain sentences. When in reality, and I try to tell them this all the time, what they're doing is actually more difficult than what a native speaker is doing. So they're accomplishing so much more than what a native speaker is doing because they're doing it in another language.
Okay. I always remember when I was at NYU, going back to the class, the Dead Sea Scrolls, one of the last days of the class, the professor brought someone from Spain, or someone who has translated it, the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, you just think about that, what I just said. Someone who translated it, the Dead Sea Scrolls, or many of the manuscripts, right, from the Dead Sea Scrolls, into Spanish. Just that fact tells me that this is a very capable individual, and that there's few human beings who can do this thing. Not that many people cannot do it, but he took on this challenge, and he produced something that is like really difficult. Understanding this Hebrew scripture, and then being able to translate it into Spanish. When he came, the professor invited him to come to our class. The professor said, in a very nice way, they were joking, they are good friends. He said, well, I am bringing this guy here, but I'm not guaranteeing that you will understand him, because he has this really heavy accent.
Okay.
And he did have a really strong accent. It was heavy. I have to say that there were times that I couldn't understand, but it was not me. All the people, even native speakers that were there, couldn't understand him. Now, if I ask, like if we were asked at that moment, what do you think about this guy? Is this guy stupid? Is this guy... we would not say that, because this was really like a high capable individual, above and beyond us. And so not pronouncing a word, having a heavy accent, didn't take away from him his capacity. And that's exactly what some people don't realize when they're looking at people who are learning a second language. They think that because they equate mispronunciation with lack of intelligence. And that's a really misconception. And I think people need to realize that when you learn a second language, you're just basically learning how to drive another car. But you already have your license from your country. You know how to drive. I mean, you come here, you're driving something different. So those are things that I think when I go into my classroom, I let people know that they are capable. They're coming into this language to learn vocabulary, to learn the way that the language is structured to communicate, but that their ability to think remains, the critical thinking goes beyond learning a language. They keep this with them, right? Because that's one thing that doesn't get translated just because doesn't get erased just because you learn a second language, or you lose it when you learn a second language. I mean, you keep it with you, and you're just learning vocabulary to kind of get to the point when you can express those complicated thoughts that you already have because you're a thinker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. The only thing that I would add to that is your metaphor. I really like your metaphor, but it's like driving different kinds of cars, right?
Yeah.
Like not necessarily like the same type of car, but maybe like a car and a motorcycle, or a car and a truck, or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Because a different language. Sometimes you get a different language that might be very similar. So like English and let's say Dutch, right? But then you have something like English and Arabic, or English and Chinese, which are very different. So some of the rules still apply. You still have verbs. You still have subjects. But the way that you drive is completely different.
No, I understand that. I think maybe the metaphor was not an accurate one to describe what I was.
I like the metaphor.
Yeah, but the idea is that people don't their capacity to think critically. We shouldn't think that people are slow learners just because they mispronounce a word or because they're using the past tense. When they use the present tense.
Yeah.
When they're telling you a story about what happened 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Those are things that they will pick up along the way. I mean, I'm talking to you right now, and if you had interviewed me 10 years ago,
sure,
it would have been this Jose Luis talking to you. The fluency that I have now is not the fluency that I had before.
Yeah.
And so that's something that comes along the way. People, oh, wow, but I was studying in my country, and I have an education. And so the fact that I couldn't express my ideas didn't mean that I was not thinking. Actually, I thought a lot. But it is frustrating when you have the answer and you cannot open your mouth because you're afraid.
Yes.
You cannot open your mouth because you don't know how to say it. And that is difficult and frustrating. And I think in that sense, my work in CLIP is also important because I support students in a challenging and frustrating task, which is learning a second language. Yeah.
Okay, and that leads me to the next question. And we're approaching an hour, so I don't know how much time you will have. Let me ask this question, and then we'll talk about time. What is your personal pedagogy when it comes to teaching ESL learners? You talked a little bit about that, but maybe we can get into the specifics of like how you teach, what you stress, what you think is important, what kind of exercises you give the students. Try to describe a little bit of your own pedagogy and how you go about teaching ESL learners.
We have in CLIP program what we call a content-based approach. We use a theme. Let's say we use education, the theme of education,
okay,
and we learn English through that, reading books about education, and then designing grammar exercise that are taken from the books, from textbooks. And as they are reading the book, they're also learning the grammar that is in there, and also they learned the content, the ideas. That is one thing that I kind of follow, and I think it's a good approach. I also teach stress grammar. Grammar, and it's not that I like just focus on grammar. But grammar is important because I kind of found in grammar like a friend. I mean, when you learn grammar, you start understanding how the language is structured, and then you kind of find different ways to play with the way that you want to say things. And so that's another thing that I do. The other thing is something that I call the group discussions that we have every week. We analyze the New York Times article. So I took my personal approach into the classroom, basically, and I asked them to analyze New York Times articles from the science sections on Tuesdays, and they, in groups, we have like student-led discussions because they are the leaders. I'm not the leader. I lead the first 3 discussions so they can see how it should be done, and then we study together what are the strategies and all that, and then afterwards they do it by themselves. And this is about critical thinking, and I think that's another thing that I really stressed. I think the idea of engage with a critical discussion with something like an article from the New York Times or articles that are going to challenge them. Because again, I believe that they have this ability within them, and that this has come with them along the way, even if they cannot express those deep thoughts that they have. That also is connected to expanding background knowledge. That's an important thing that I think I stress, because when you know more about the culture, you know more about what's going on, you know more about the news. You learn vocabulary, you learn structure, but you also learn content. And I think content is important because you want to be aware and you want to be engaging with different people at different levels of discussion. So that's one thing. And I guess we also talk about research paper. Nowadays, we live in a data-driven society. Yes. Whether we like it or not, we need to learn about research. We need to learn how research are structured, how people find, how researchers come up with findings, how they understand that. So we spend some time of that, of the class focusing on research paper. And what else? I think those are the main things that I think are focused on most of the time. Yeah, that sounds really good. All
right, we've past the hour mark. I guess we're gonna end the conversation soon. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of these interesting conversations that we had at the Writing Center, philosophical discussions, but I feel like that we should save for next time. I would love to have you and Noman, my old buddies from the Writing Center, on the podcast at the same time, and hopefully we can arrange that.
Yeah.
And we could talk a little bit about religion, belief, philosophy.
Yeah.
We had some very interesting conversations before. I respect you. I respect Noman. I respect what you believe. And I just come at it from a secular perspective, and that's all I do. And I just want to understand how belief works. And every now and then when I talk to you guys, I feel a little bit like, there's a little bit of, hey, look at this, look at what I believe. It's you're welcomed to join me in this. Every now and then I feel like there's a little bit of that. So the last real question will be, what's the biggest lesson that you got from working at the Writing Center?
The biggest lesson.
Yeah, I know that's kind of it's hard to summarize.
Yeah,
like all of the experiences that you've had at the Writing Center. But if it taught you one thing that you'll take with you, right? I'm sure there are other things, but like one thing that you remember that
I would
really
say
important.
a combination of the ability to think, to listen to people, to listen to them. Sometimes it's not just to listen to the words. You need to listen to them, because sometimes what they are saying is not exactly what they want. And making that distinction is a tricky one, especially when you're working with ESL students and they come to you with, let's say, grammatical issues, grammatical problems in their papers, but they also come with they want to understand something that was in the instructions of the assignment. And all the times they have the answer, and you want to listen carefully to what you want to focus on. So the ability to listen to people, I think, is one. And I would say the understanding that as a tutor, you are a facilitator.
Yes.
And that very often the answer is within the student. And if it's not there, they can get it when you become like a bridge. You find a handout, and the three of you, the person, and the handout, the three of you get together and then have a conversation. And then once you have that conversation, all of a sudden the student is understanding what is the problem or what is the actual solution that he was looking for. And so those two things, the ability to listen to people and the fact that as a tutor you're a facilitator, many of our students come with their answers. They have the answer already, or if they don't have it, they can find it with handouts and your interaction. You're asking questions, and I guess asking questions goes along the way.
Yeah, the whole Socratic thing is burned into us.
Yeah, I mean,
by Jan.
Yeah, you need Jan, our director. You ask questions, and sometimes people don't like it because you're not giving them the answer, because they're looking they're fast, they have things to do after the session, they cannot stay there the whole time. But when you ask them questions, it's an interesting dynamic. Yeah. So I guess those three things.
And I would concur with what you said. I think those, like, I was trying to think of what I would say, because I don't just want to ask you a question that I wouldn't answer. So, but I couldn't. I mean, you said them all, right? Those are the most important things. We are facilitators. Mm-hmm. We are not like you said about those other guys, that they were the fountain of knowledge.
Yeah. The divine source.
Yeah, which is how they felt to you. But we as tutors, educators, teachers are facilitators of learning. It's an individual process. You can take a horse to water, you can't make him drink. Mm-hmm. It's something that the student has to work for, and learning how to listen to people, learning how to be Socratic, is really the way that you can teach. I used to say that you can't teach anybody anything. Mm-hmm. You can inspire the person to learn. Because I don't know if I would phrase it exactly like that anymore, but the idea, I still believe in that. You have to help someone to help themselves. You can't just I'm struggling, because some things you do have to tell somebody. You do have to, like, if you're teaching them a math equation, you have to kind of tell them that. But for it to stick, I mean, they have to practice it, and they have to really understand it themselves. Otherwise, they're just regurgitating.
Yeah.
Regurgitating.
I guess there is some also that we cannot deny that there's some teaching going on in the writing center, because when you're teaching them a grammar rule, for example, they don't know how it works. So you need to explain that to them. And at that moment, in particular, you could say, well, there's some teaching going on. But teaching the grammar rule versus driving the whole section and teaching the grammar rule and then fixing the paper for them is a different story.
Yeah, different
like
thing.
once you explain to them, the idea is that they now know what to do. So you allow them to demonstrate that they know, and then you are there to support them when they make a mistake. Then you can go with the Socratic method kicks in, and you start asking questions. So
Yeah.
why does this? Why does that? And then all these things. So I guess that takes to something that I didn't mention, but it's important: empathy. I have been there. There were times in the writing center when I didn't cry in front of the person because
Okay.
I wanted to refrain myself. But there were times when I felt that I didn't have any right to feel to feel bad that things that horrible things were happening to me. I mean, horrible things like what? For example, I didn't get a good grade. I came in late one day. Like all those things, when you compare them to the difficulties, the real challenges, life challenges that many immigrant students have in their lives, personal responsibilities, families. Some of them are losing things that are real things, right? And I'm not going to go into details, but and they come to the writing center to get the job done, despite all these difficulties they're facing. And I heard a couple times, like 2 testimonies of individuals, and after the session, I just took a break to think about I need to really do better. I need to be grateful, and at the same time, I should give more because these people are giving everything that they have, their time, their minds, their resources, and their dreams. Put things aside just to come and get things done in the writing center and just follow and the instructions of the professor.
Right. And there are students who face extraordinary circumstances. And I was just looking up right now the story of Khalif Browder, who was arrested at the age of 16 for allegedly stealing a backpack and was imprisoned for 3 years on Rikers Island. Without trial, and spent most of his time in solitary confinement, who later committed suicide, and was a student here. And, I've heard some of these testimonies too, and it's so challenging when you think about your role as an educator or as a teacher or as a tutor. Sometimes you have to expand what your role is, or what your duties are, because you're faced with difficult circumstances. And that's not to say that we are everybody's counselor. I'm just saying that sometimes you have to be really empathetic, like you said, and understanding of circumstances. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, just I think it's part of the job to listen to people, and we are not, like you said, we're not trained to be counselors, and we shouldn't try to counsel people on personal issues, but we can always listen to them and guide them to the resources that we have and find people that can do that job. And that is part of what we do. Yeah. But the listening part is a major part. I think sometimes people just need to listen, to be listened to. And nowadays that is lacking. Very often we think that we have lost that ability to talk, and the people don't want to talk, but sometimes they want to talk, and the only place that they have is in the writing center, or it happens to be that when they are frustrated and they are having this difficult time, they kind of are in the writing center and they find this space, a safe space to divulge their personal matters and discuss them with us. And again, that doesn't happen all the time, but I always remember those 2 occasions when I had to kind of listen to these people and then realize that, hey, people are having rough times doing things.
And sometimes you really don't know, and you can't judge a book by its cover, and that's where the empathy comes in, I think. That was a really good point. I'm glad we talked about that. So that's about it. Is there something that you want to leave the listeners, the watchers, with? Final message. It could be a pithy saying, a maxim.
Okay.
Something to leave the people with. It could be your personal philosophy, whatever.
I guess two expressions that I keep in my mind is that the key, and I don't know if this is something that is maybe meaningful to people, but the key to live a dynamic life, a meaningful life, it resides or is based on two things. One is having the ability or wanting to change, having that desire to change all the time, and hunger for learning. Like those two things are key. I'm not saying the only things, but these two things have kept me going. The desire to change, to be better, to find other ways to improve the life of other people, and then my life along the way, and then hunger for learning. There are so many things that we can learn, that we can read about, and those two things keeps me together, keeps me going, and I think that those are things that people can use, can have, and those things can help them go too, a long way.
Stay hungry. Keep learning.
Yeah.
Keep wanting.
The
keep
desire
improving.
to change, a deep desire to change. I mean, to improve your life, to find ways to improve or enhance your personal life and the life of other people. And then you need to have that, to be hungry for learning, to get more knowledge, finding ways to learn things, I guess.
I would concur with that.
Yeah.
Thank you, my friend.
Okay.
Next time on the Gymnog Pod, episode 5. Rebecca Perez. She is a spoken word artist, a poet, a writer, and a colleague. We will talk about her writing, and we'll listen to her read some of her pieces, hopefully. I'll finally have on another writer, which is something I've been looking forward to for quite a while. I am hoping that Jose Luis Reyes comes back to the program in the future, and we can talk about religion and philosophy, get all philosophical.
Music by Marcos de Jesus, marcosanlaguagua.com. Art by Cico1844, at Cico1844 on Instagram. If you like the show, subscribe wherever you find it. My website is jamesnoguera.com. Noguera is Noguera. And thank you for your interest.